Alright guys, it looks like we are live streaming today. I am going to get started as soon as I send out this link here to everyone active in the channel. So bear with me. First, as usual, there's a little bit of gap of time before the tutorial gets started. Sorry if my voice is a little low or cracked today. My voice has not been feeling great as of late. Let's see. Alright. Let me get things kicked off. Now today you'll notice that there is a second gun existing behind my primary one. Pop open my layers, I'm just going to hide my bake. So you'll notice there's this wonderful thing back here, and I'm going to explain that here in just a moment. For right now, I'm actually just going to go ahead and hide it. Now, this doodad over here would be my final version of my gun that we UV'd out and everything, turn off this texture. So you'll notice I only have one side of it still, and I'm going to worry about all that mirroring and stuff once I'm actually done dealing with the baking of it. So if I pop open, say if I select everything, you'll notice in here this is my final UV slot. I condensed this stuff about as much as I possibly could for the sake of at least this bake. So go back into my scene file. What we're going to be talking about today is setting things up for baking, and I'm going to be putting this into 3ds Max after Maya. Now there are many ways to bake normals. There are ways to do it in Maya. I can go over ways to do it in Maya, though I don't particularly use Maya baking. But once you get the principles, you should understand it. My recommendation would be to look into something called XNormal. XNormal is a pretty simple way of baking things. Something I can actually download. We can probably cover in a future lesson. But today we're just going to briefly go over the ideas of baking, separating out your low and high polygons, and creating objects for them. Now the first thing I'm going to talk about is explaining why there was that weird version of my gun behind it. Now when you see this gun is fully assembled, but there are a lot of individual components that are going to be baking into normals of objects that are within their these like constraints. So when you're baking normals and you're using cages, the cages are going to expand outward, and you'll see that when we put it in 3ds Max so you can see it visually. But the problem with that obviously is if you expand something that's connected to something else, it's going to start baking the normals from the other objects that are surrounding it. So we have to basically separate every individual object from each other. This also works for creating the ambient occlusion map on a singular basis, but a lot of the time we'll also bake out the objects touching together for another ambient occlusion map. That way we actually have all the occlusion from the objects touching. But I'm going to explain to you guys how we go from this to this. This is basically what a bake explosion looks like. And this is, I found personally, the easiest way to always handle bake explosions, because obviously you're going to separate everything out. You could create two different objects, but then once it's back in its original state, you already have it assembled rather than having to reassemble it yourself. So this is pretty simple to do. It involves just keyframing, to show you guys how to keyframe. So, but save this file really quick. I'm going to take all of this and I'm just going to duplicate it so that I don't overwrite my explosion. And hide my old version of them. So the first thing you're going to want to do, so you'll notice we have our two separate layers still, the bake high polygon and the bake low polygon. At this point I've separated everything out into the individual components so that I don't drag multiple objects, because you're going to want to make sure that every object you drag, you're dragging both the high and low polygon version of it, essentially, so that it remains within its own limitations, so it bakes properly. Now I'm going to grab everything, and this is down here is your timeline. Apparently this wants to keep coming back. Whatever. Oh, it's not covering me. Okay. So we're going to click on this wonderful keyframe. This is an auto toggle. So basically when we create something, it's going to automatically create a keyframe for us. Now on the first key, we're going to have to set the key, which for you guys should be S. So if you select everything, stop it. Just hide you. Ah, look at that. So if you got everything selected, you're just going to hit S. You'll notice that there's a little red line now below on your timeline. This indicates that there's a keyframe that's set. So you'll see here in the layer editor, everything is red. That means keyframe. So this is our original state, correct? And now we're just going to move over to the second frame. Still got a couple of animations from when I was working on it, but that's fine. I just want to get you guys the point of what we're doing here. So now I'm just simply going to start taking some of these objects, in this case, so these two cylinders, and separating them out. Grab this, grab that and that, and separate those out. Your objects get separated. Just try and work them in to the point where they're back where they belong. This one has smaller details and these little buttons. Make sure and grab that whole thing. Grab this guy as well. Just going to separate that whole body out. This little bottom thing, hair trigger. This little guy. Notice my trigger was already there, so I'm going to move him back up to match this guy. Looks pretty accurate. So it's just as simple as taking everything and bringing it out. For some reason that top piece didn't want to delete its animation keys. So just make sure when you're moving everything as a group. So selected, you can just hit S to make sure it keyframes, but it should automatically keyframe for you. And that's how essentially you create an exploded view of a weapon. Now, just to essentially show you guys what we did there. Go back into that view. Just going to delete this. So everything we have is completely separated out. This also gives you a chance to go in, take a look with everything and see and make sure that you have all of the pieces for some reason. I seem to have lost all of my pieces, which that's fine. I'll show you guys the state that it ends up getting into. I don't want to waste my time trying to find all my pieces currently. Now, you can see that I essentially have two pieces. At this point, after breaking them apart through the keyframing, I duplicated all the pieces and just combined them into one, and then moved both the low poly and the high poly state into individual layers. So here's all of my low polygon pieces. Sorry, my high polygon pieces. And here's all my low polygon pieces. All still retaining their UVs. So if you pop up in the UV editor, you'll notice that it's still the same. Just exploded. This is a very simple way. So just make sure when you're done, just duplicate all of the objects and then combine them so that you have a exploded view that's solid, and you can still keyframe back to one so you still have the assembled version. So now essentially we're going to take this and put our high polygon. Everything looks solid for this. Now when you bake this, at least for this object, you're going to have to do one of two things. You're either going to have to put it into Turbo Smooth mode, which is 3 on your keyboard, and then that's going to be handled in Max through a stack modifier. Or if you're taking this object into something like X normal, you're going to have to actually go in and smooth it out. That's done under Mesh and Smooth. Let's see if I don't crash my computer, because I have some of my objects are smooth, some of them are not already. Generally speaking, you should do this twice. Don't do it if you already have some objects smooth. The best way to go about doing it at that point is to separate out the objects that you do have smooth, and then go ahead and smooth over the rest of them, and then recombine it into one. For my case, I am just going to I'm going to press 3 on the keyboard, and hopefully I don't crash. There we go. I think we're good. And now I'm going to go ahead and export this out under File, Export Selection. Put this on my desktop, and I'm exporting these things as FBXs. I'm going to take this one's a gun bake high, save that out. I'm going to pop back over to my low polygon. I'm going to turn off the texture. I'm going to make sure everything got to get my smoothing done, so I'm going to grab a few of these just really quick. I'm going to leave some of them because I'm going to show you guys when it gets to the bake what happens exactly when you don't do this process. Let's go ahead and smooth all that out. Okay, that's pretty simple. Take this one. Smooth all this out. I'll probably go in and fix some of this separately when I have a chance. But I'm gonna leave these little wings out here with that hard surface. I'm gonna show you guys essentially what happens in that bake when we leave it like that. So we've got the low polygon state. I'm gonna export this out as well. Call this my gun low bake. So now I have two. I have my high polygon and I have my low polygon. Now, like I said, there are many ways to do this. The way I'm going to show you guys is through program 3ds Max, which is also Autodesk. And essentially we're going to do what's called creating a projection bake. So in here, I'm going to import both of my objects, which I put on my desktop. I'm going to bring in my low first. Which apparently had some weird stuff going on with the female. I'm not sure what. Check to make sure that there's nothing wrong with this UV space. Take anything wrong with that. I'm still seeing my UVs. So I'm going to import my high. See if I don't crash max. I may have to go in and separate out. Yeah, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead take that piece. Let's do that. Let's do that. Let's do that. And that guy. I'm going to pop them out of this object. This is the stuff that I worked off of an already smooth axis, so I'm going to deselect this. I'm going to combine these guys. I'm going to export that. Let's call this gun big high smooth. And then we'll smooth this one. That loads in a lot nicer. Make sure I didn't accidentally grab anything else that was smooth already. Didn't look like it. So I'm going to go ahead and export that out as my gun big high. Probably crashed Max. I did. Give me a second on that. Still reboot. So we won't get into texturing today, and this is actually probably going to be a relatively quick lesson. Because I just want you guys to see the general setup for baking a texture. Alright, you can still see. Okay, let's do that again. I'm actually going to import my bake first. Guess that will let me. Thank you. Alright, there we go. It's going to import all these random little data thing. I'm generally speaking just delete all that crap. And then import a smooth out version as well. Okay, so it looks like our scales are off. I'm not sure how that happened. I'm going to import my low. Got everything, so now I'm just going to scale everything up. So I'm also zoomed in. Delete all this data. Okay, so I have three things right now. I have my low polygon, my high polygon, and my smooth out polygon. So here's my smooth one. So I'm going to go over to my stack modifier in here. And I won't explain too much about Max, but this second icon up here called modify shows you essentially what's called a stack modifier. And these build up on top of each other. Basically kind of like what history is in Maya. Now, when I go in and I select the other one, which was my high polygon piece that we pressed 3, which is turbo smooth, you'll notice in here in Max we have a stack modifier called TurboSmooth, which is essentially doing its job is smoothing it out. Now, right now, if we were to isolate this, if you're curious, this is Alt Q in 3ds Max. If we were to turn off isolating display, we would actually see the wireframe smoothed out to what it really is. Now, if I don't crash it, this is what it actually looks like, all smoothed out. So it's the equivalent of Maya's smooth button, but it has this nifty little feature where it's actually not going to show you the entire wireframe. Basically, essentially what we do when we press 3 in Maya. Let's go back. Tools and isolate. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a stack modifier called a projection. So I'm going to go ahead and select my low polygon state. Drop down to this modifier list. Scroll down until I find something called projection. So this creates all these wonderful little blue lines, which if we were to actually go ahead and select the cage itself through the selection method, we could start messing with the cage. And no, I'm not talking about Lucifer's cage. So drop down to the cage. We have our push and pull essentially, which we can actually start going in and expanding the cage. I would not recommend doing this too much. Manually moving the vertexes of the cage is a little bit more functional, but don't do this yet, because when we go in to set things up, so we're going to go down into rendering and render to texture. Do not believe you can currently see, so I'm going to go ahead and it's not showing you the window. It is a problem. I don't know why. Sometimes I really hate working with this program. So I'll provide you guys screen caps until I can actually figure this out. I opened up render to texture and then opened up the projection mapping options, and then also opened up the global super sampler options. And I'm actually just going to quickly show you guys what that looks like. Essentially, you'll see from this screen cap, these are the windows that we are using. And the render to texture projection options and render setup. So we're going to go back in here. It's really dumb. I'll figure that out. Apparently it does not want to show you guys the window, which is not very helpful to me. Now, in that render to texture thing, I have basically a drop down in here called projection mapping, which I'm going to enable. It allows me to pick what exactly it is that I'm going to be projecting to, which I'm going to pick both my high polygon pieces because it's the low polygon that's getting all the information from the high polygon. Now it's going to load this and let's see. Do that again real quick. So this is why I said don't mess too much with the cage. When you go to render to texture, you get this disaster. So if you had done any work on that cage, essentially you would have lost all of it. So I'm going to go ahead and reset the cage. I'm going to select everything in here, cage-wise, and I'm just going to push them out just a little bit. Just enough that I think we have most of what we need to look for. Now, in this menu, you'll notice you'll have an output. We're going to go ahead and add in, at first, just a normals map, setting it at pretty low standards. And we're just going to throw it as a 1024. And saving it out as a target image. Maybe just a 32-bit. As well. So this is the menu essentially with all the options. So you'll notice in projection mapping we had it enabled. We went through pick, selected our high polygons. In our output we went and selected add, which we added a normals map just for now at least, and kept it at low res as a 1024. We added its output settings, a file name and file type. And there has name, normals map. So, go back into this. The other stuff right now in the projection options and render setup is not relevant yet. It will be. Now, I'm going to go ahead and click render in there. Let's see if I can get this window working. Kind of. It's really interesting if that works. So this is my UV window now. It's baked out the high polygon information. Now, as you'll notice in here, there's a lot of problems right now, and that's okay. So, there's a lot of red. Now in our render to texture settings, we left something in there called the projection array, which is under options for the projection mapping for array mischeck. And that's what that bright red is. What that essentially is signifying is that the rays that are being cast from the high polygon to the low polygon, there's missing information there. This could either be because your cage was too small or because there isn't any information there. Now, this requires a lot of finagling on your end. This is something we won't go through necessarily in the lesson entirely today. Some of these ray misses are ray misses because the high polygon cuts off there. Some of them are ray misses because the cage is messed up. Now, personally, I always hop between my Max and my Maya. So I'm going to go back into scene 1 here, show you guys. I'm going to grab my low polygon. And essentially, I can go in and look at my UV map in comparison to what I'm looking at in 3ds Max, and I can click on the UV spaces in Maya and the shells that are like this to find out, okay, this is the piece that I'm looking for. Now, this little guy, there's nothing there currently, because I'm going to manually fix that later. But so we've got this little guy right here. So let's go ahead and find out. So it looks like that's this guy right here, the bottom of him. So if I go back into my Maxine, granted, didn't set some of the stuff up right, which is fine. So now you'll see why. If I go ahead and I select this, seemingly some of the stuff went, and this is why I say don't use that push modifier too much. A lot of these became very discombobulated and went past the hull. So if I start selecting some of this stuff, I'm manually now taking it and bringing it down. Just like that. Again, I'm manually just moving these individual pieces at this point. Now it looks like everything in there is fixed. Click projection on it again. And now now, boom. That little spot, as opposed to before, is now completely fixed. So, obviously this is just a hunting mission at this point. We've got, let's find out this little guy right here. This little guy right here. Let's go back into my scene file in my UV texture area. Just pressing F to focus on it. It looks like this cage piece is right there. I've got this on 3 in my 3ds Max. So we know it's coming from this area right here. Now this is an example of the cage not being too far, or not being far enough. Apologies. So you can see that these lines are jutting into the high polygon because there's more detail information. So I'm just going to go ahead and drag that cage not that far. But now I'll go back to render it again. Boom. We've got it fixed. So process of elimination here. Guess we'll go through as much of this as we need to. We'll have the time allotted. So we've got a slot happening over here in this guy. So let's go back into that. Go about right here. No, we're right next to one of the slants. So we're actually on this guy. Select that shell, press focus. Looks like we're this guy right here. Can I use mouse? So we're this guy right here. Okay. So problems like this. Once I fix that, and just stuff like that. So this didn't have edge loops properly set into that corner. So when we smooth it out, it just bent. But not that big of a deal. That was fixed instantly. Obviously, some of our major red is coming from the tops of these guns right here. These big red lines here. I'm going to go into that handle area and see what's going on here. So you'll notice on the top of this, probably should have deleted that face, but I missed it, and it's fine. There's no actual high polygon information up on that, so that's where we're getting that red line currently. We've got another red spot happening towards above the grip line. Not sure why. Oh, there it is. Roll this out. Just go ahead and move these guys out just a little bit long. Just for adding measure. So we've got essentially a bump in that area for detail. Now we go back to render it. It should fix that. Bam. Aha. So little by little, this map starts to come together. Now, if we wanted to, yes, I'm going to delete this source real quick. I'm going to open up Photoshop. So I'm just going to open up that normal map. This is that normal map right now. So you're seeing a lot of information. You're seeing it at a very low res currently. But these pink spots are those ray misses, which that's fine. I'm going to go in and fix the rest of those pink spots pretty handily. Some of these green ones are also ray miss checks, which that's pretty easy to fix as well. Now, for the most part though, and this is what normal information looks like, granted again at a very low resolution, and we're going to up that resolution here in just a second as the last part of this. I'm not going to bake it out because baking it out at high resolution obviously takes a higher amount of time. Now next class we're going to go through methods of fixing some of this stuff. Like you'll see some of these have wavy lines, and that's caused from cylindrical objects, and that's pretty easy to fix. Now the wings, these guys, because we didn't have some of those smooth out normals, you'll see some hard edge lines happening in some of those areas. I'm going to go in and fix that, but this is why we go in and we smooth some of those normals, is because we get things like this, these hard bends in the normal map. Now it's not to say you can't obviously go in and actually fix these yourself pretty simply through normal painting. We're not going to bother with that just yet. I'm going to show you guys how to do that at a later point. But for the most part, that's essentially what baking is. Now, the last thing once I have all of my fixes in place, all those ray miss checks dealt with, I'm going to take off ray miss check from the projection options, and I'm going to open up something in that window also called the Global Super Sampler, which opens up a window for basically the settings of how detailed it is you're going for. And this window for 3ds Max, if you're curious in baking out 3ds Max, I always use Cadmium ROM for my filter, and my Global Super Sampler, I always use Hammersley. These are basically just sampling detail levels, pretty simple and straightforward. And then of course I always upgrade my size of my file that I bake out of it from a 1024 to 248. Bake out at a minimum of 2K, at least that's what I do. And then what I'm also going to do there is I'm going to add in a diffuse map, my diffuse map, and then I'll show you guys here in just a second. The diffuse map is why we assign colors in the high polygon. This is going to create what I call the ID map. So the two things we're baking out of here is the normal and the ID map. Let's see how fast it'll render. Now, the point of an ID map is for texturing. What it essentially is going to do is create blocks of color as indicated through what we've assigned in the high polygon, where you can go in and assign different material sources. This is really good for when you're using stuff like Quixel or Substance, where you're creating automatically generated layers. And you'll see in just a moment. Let's see how long this bake takes. It looks like it's going to take about 5 minutes. So bear with me. It's exciting. About halfway. Now, if you don't happen to use something like Substance or Quixel, an ID map is still very helpful because you can create an overlay map in Photoshop that allows you to quickly select varying areas and masking them out, masking them in, creating paint overs, etc. Kind of just like an easy access map. This is currently what's going on. It's really exciting. No, it's not capturing it yet. It's so weird. I need a new streaming service. Need a better one. Not entirely sure. Doesn't show you guys windows, which is really dumb. Check out my eBay bids. Found out that you can actually bid on the clothing from Magnificent Seven, so I'm super stoked. I'm in a bidding war. Let's see what my vest is up to now. No, it's different. Nothing's changed. Well, that's good. With my cosmo wait. Yeah. Oh, it's almost done. And it's done. Okay. So before this lesson ends, I'm going to pop open my Photoshop. Looks like I already had that. Select my norm and my diffuse map. So this is what that diffuse map looks like. It looks very bland and boring. Essentially should. Now this is all the different colors of things that we've assigned to a gun on the various parts. Now, normal map, you'll see now has a lot more detail from that last one. This is what I was talking about with those wavy lines, and that stuff I'll show you guys in the next lesson for finalizing our normal map and setting up for actual texturing. We'll go through all of that at that point. But you'll still see some of this light blue stuff, some of this white, and bright green is where some of our rightnesses are still happening. I'm going to go in separately. I'm going to finish clearing all that up so we have a nice-ish clean normal map. Of course, I'll have to go in and fix those wings as well, but that's pretty easy to do. So until next time, thank you guys for joining the stream. This has been Class 10, Setting Up Baking. Programs we use were Maya, 3ds Max, and Photoshop. Have a nice day.